This over here with me is the Xiaomi Redmi 90, and we will be talking all about this phone in today's video right after this introduction. What is up guys, my name is Baha, and if this is your first time watching my channel, I make all sorts of vlogging, traveling, cars and technology video reviews. And today we'll be talking about this phone, the Xiaomi Redmi 90. I've been using this phone for about 4 months now. It was initially released in January 2021 of this year, and ever since then I actually had a few comments to say here and there about entry-level phones like this one, and what exactly do they mean within the 21st century as we speak today. So without further ado, let's get into all of the nitty-gritty specifications of this phone, and let's see if it's actually worth it or not. And stick till the end of this video because I will be answering the big question of whether smart flagship phones are worth it in 2021 or not. So without further ado, let's actually get into this video. So let's actually start with the most interesting part that everyone's waiting for, which is the cameras on the back. Now, as you can see, there are actually 4 cameras on the back of this phone. There is a main camera, an ultra-wide camera, a depth, and a macro camera. Now, the main camera on this phone is actually 48 megapixels, which is pretty decent for a really low budget phone like this one. And it comes with an aperture of f1.8. What this basically means is that at night you will be able to get better photography out of this phone just because the lens is incredibly wide, which allows more light into the sensor that does all the processing of your images. But the size of the sensor is also 1/2 inch, so that is, for a mobile phone, a pretty big sensor. And it has a 26 millimeter width. What this basically means is that you might not be using it ideally for vlogging. You might want to move it a little bit to the front like that, just so that you can get the angle that you're looking for. And because of that, I don't think that this is ideal for vlogging, but the main camera is still really good for a phone of this price. Now, coming over to the second camera, which is our ultra-wide camera. This one is actually only 8 megapixels compared to the 48 megapixel main camera. This one is much less in pixels. But this one also has a lower aperture of f2.2. Still incredibly good in low light, just not as good as the main camera. And the size of this sensor is actually 1/4 inch, which means that the sensor is incredibly small, wouldn't be able to detect a lot of light information. So at night photography, it might be good, but it might not be incredibly ideal, maybe not the perfect choice for you. Next up, we have the macro camera, which comes with an f2.4 aperture, and it's only 2 megapixels. Again, if you're taking incredibly close-up shots of photography or something, it's really low in pixels, so I wouldn't recommend this that much. But overall, this system is actually good. And over here you have the flash as you would expect, and we also have the, the depth camera. Exactly the same as the macro camera, 2 megapixel and f2.4 aperture. And that's about it for this back camera. Now, let's come over here to the selfie camera. As you can see, this phone actually has a notch, alright? It's not a hole punch, it still has a notch. That's pretty much expected from a phone of this price budget. So for this selfie camera, it only comes at 8 megapixel with an aperture of f2.1, a little bit better than the other 3 cameras on the back of this phone. And it only has a f1.4 aperture sensor size, which means that it's not the best, but it's still pretty decently good. And again, it comes at 1080p at 30 frames per second recording options, but for the back camera you actually have 2 options of recording when you're doing videos: 720p at 30 frames per second or 1080p at 30 frames per second. That's about it for the video options of both the cameras. And now let's get into the more interesting stuff. Let's start with the display. Everyone loves the display, and that pretty much makes it the selling point of majority of the low-end phones nowadays and the high-end phones. This one is actually an IPS LCD display, which tops out at about 400 nits, or if I'm not mistaken, 395 pixels per inch density. Not that good, but it's still perfectly fine. At least when I use it every single day, it does perfectly fine for me in the sunshine going on. And apart from that, this phone is actually pretty big. If you actually compare it to my hand, which is a pretty big hand, this phone is at 6.53 inch of display. So this phone is not incredibly bad, especially for the price range, but I think it's a little bit way too big for this price range in terms of size, at the very least. The aspect ratio is actually 19.5 multiplied by 9, so it's perfectly fine as well. And in terms of the build quality, the front is actually made out of Gorilla Glass 3, which as we speak right now is pretty cheap, but it's still Gorilla Glass 3, so it's pretty decent when it comes to protection. I haven't tried dropping it on its face yet, but I wouldn't recommend trying it unless that's your review phone or something that you're doing. But personally for me, I wouldn't try dropping it right now. And at the end, it feels more like plastic, gloss, metallic finish. Mostly plastic, and that's what exactly cuts down the prices. So what else do we have? Over here we actually have the body size. The body is actually made of 162.3 millimeter worth of length and 77.3 millimeter of width and 9.8 millimeter of depth, basically. Alright, and this phone is actually not that incredibly heavy, so this phone lies at about 198 grams worth of weight, so it's not so bad, but it's not heavy as well, so you could literally carry it. It will be much lighter than the majority of the phones that weigh over 200 grams nowadays. And one last thing that I want to mention about this body is that it actually comes with a dual nano SIM card, so you can literally insert 2 SIM cards, and maybe you could even replace them with a memory card, since the whole thing is basically in nanometers going on. Now, for the next part of this phone, we will be talking about the platform that this phone comes in. This phone comes shipped with Android 10 and MIUI 12. Comes with the processor of the Qualcomm Snapdragon 662, which is an 11 nanometer fabrication process. It's not the best of the world, but hey, it does the perfectly average jobs that I want to do. Like personally for me, what do I do with my phone? I scroll through Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I'm basically an average consumer, and for me, I would say that this phone is perfectly fine. 662 nanometer chip does the job perfectly fine. If you're a gamer or something, then I would need to run some game testing, but for now I have no reason to do so. So yeah, for me this processor works perfectly fine, no lags, no issues, nothing at all. It does the job perfectly fine, and it's an 8-core CPU, so it will be able to handle mathematical calculations together really well. That's another thing that I enjoy about this phone. And it comes with the Adreno 610 GPU. Again, I haven't tested the GPU myself for video games or anything, but for my daily usage of Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and all of that, hey, this phone does the job perfectly fine. Now, this phone actually, when you're thinking of buying it, it comes with 3 options. It comes with the 64 gigabyte storage and 4 gigs of RAM. This comes at about 140 to 150 US dollars. In Malaysia, when I first saw it in the dealership, it was about 600 ringgit. And then there is the 128 gigabyte storage and the 4 gigabyte of RAM. Again, I didn't buy that because RAM is simply not going to be enough in our days right now, especially that mobile development is becoming much more enhanced. Finally, the last option that you have will be 128 gigabytes of storage and 6 gigs of RAM. This version basically. My recommendation is, if you're actually thinking about getting the Xiaomi Redmi 90, which is this phone, I would say get the 128 gigabyte and 6 gigs of RAM. For the price point that it has, this phone does perfectly fine, no lag, no issues, everything's perfectly fine. And if I did not mention, there will be another surprise coming up at the end, which is the biggest selling point of this phone. Now, let's talk about the UFS storages. For the 64 gigabyte models, you'll be getting the UFS 2.1, and for the 128 gigabyte models, you'll be getting a UFS 2.2. And one last thing that I have forgotten to mention earlier is that this one supports NFC, near field communication. So if there is an NFC tag near you, this one will basically support, and this could help with payments and other processes that require wireless transmissions, RFID basically. That's a big advantage for a phone at this price point. Could be a selling point for you, it could be a deal breaker for you, God knows. I personally don't know. So yeah, now let's talk about the audio of this phone. This phone comes with a stereo speaker. It comes with a speaker over here, and that's about it. Alright, and the audio actually comes out at 24-bit at 192 kilohertz of audio. Perfectly fine, it sounds amazingly well, and it also comes with a 3.5mm headphone jack. Now, for majority of the flagships nowadays that have eliminated the headphone jack and everyone going wireless and AirPods and all of that, this is still a feature that I use. Just get a headphone jack or a microphone jack like what I'm using to record the video right now. Start recording away. What do you have to regret? Absolutely nothing. If anything, I'm actually using this headphone jack pretty frequently whenever I have headsets and I'm at the gym, or at least I used to do so when I was before the corona lockdown pandemic has trapped us all at home. Now let's come to the very, very big selling point of this phone and why this is a very big deal breaker for me. This phone comes with 6,000 milliamp hour of battery. For a phone at this price point, this is a very, very big deal. What this basically means is that this phone would literally go with you for an entire day, no problems, no issues, no dead batteries, nothing. This phone will survive a perfect day and it will still come back home at 30%. I have tried it under severe conditions in the past, and this phone has really survived a lot with me. So I do love the fact that this phone comes with a 6,000 milliamp hour battery, and if battery is a big deal for you on a budget phone, definitely get this phone. Now, in terms of charging, this phone comes with an 18 watt fast charging. Not a big deal, but hey, it's much better than what Apple does nowadays. No pun intended. Alright. Yes, this phone comes with an 18 watt fast charging, and it also comes with a 2.5 watt reverse charger. So if one of your devices has run out of charge and you want to reverse charge it, this phone will do it. It's going to be really slow, but hey, it still exists. You might use this feature. Now, if you're looking to buy this phone as well comes with 4 different color options. It comes with ocean green, carbon gray, my bad, twilight blue, and surprise orange. I have went with the carbon gray option, and personally, I like it. So, with all the nitty-gritty and everything that was going on in this phone, what exactly is the price of an amazing device like this? Well, believe it or not, when I have got it here in Malaysia, I have got it for 700 ringgit at the top end specs, 700 ringgit only. To those of you who are not in Malaysia, that's approximately 165 US dollars. And when you do a little bit more research, you might even find it for 140 or 150 dollars. So if you're incredibly low on budget, if you're just a normal social media consumer like I am, if you don't want a phone that does anything which is insanely crazy, then hey, for $150, this is a perfectly good choice for you. And with everything that has been discussed about this phone, you might actually be having a rightful question going on in your head. Do flagships even matter in 2021, or do mid-range phones matter if entry-level phones like this one are incredibly good nowadays? Well, personally for me, I would say that it all depends on your preference. Like if you're going for high-end camera like the Note 20 Ultra or the iPhone 12 Pro Max or whatever is equivalent in the future, if you're watching this from the future, then hey, I would say that this phone is not a camera beast, but it does the job perfectly well. And maybe if you're looking for other features within the phone itself, 120 Hz refresh rate or whatsoever, then I would not recommend this phone. This phone comes with a 60 Hz refresh rate, does the job perfectly fine for me, but if your eyes are used to 120 Hz, don't get this phone, it's just a downgrade for you. And apart from that, there are as well other features, but like I said, if you're just an average consumer who wants to make a phone just to be able to use it every single day, this phone works perfectly fine if you're not looking for anything magical. So yes, if I would recommend this phone, I would definitely recommend it. And yes, I do believe that low-end and entry-level phones are becoming much better nowadays. And that's about it for this short video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe down below. Comment down below if you would buy this phone or not. Let me know as well what other kind of stuff you want me to cover within the future videos. And without further ado, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Twitter as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.